Hey guys, what's going on? So this is the type of video that I actually didn't really find myself making anytime soon. Mainly because when it comes to ranking videos, this site is just overflowing with ranking videos, but I just thought, you know what, why don't I throw my hat in the ring and see what I can do? But as you all know, Black Widow was supposed to come out in the beginning of May until it was pushed till November due to that fucking coronavirus. Seriously, that thing is ruining everything. But I just thought, you know what, screw it. This is a video that I've wanted to do for quite some time and I don't want to wait any longer. But if you guys could not tell by the title of the video, I'm here to give you guys my ranking of the MCU's Infinity Saga, the film starting off with the original Iron Man and ending with Spider-Man Far From Home. Now before I go on and give you guys my rankings, I do have a couple of guidelines to issue. One of them being that this is my subjective ranking. I completely get that there are films that are ranked higher or films that are ranked lower that you guys would probably either have ranked higher or lower or probably more in the middle tier of the MCU's Infinity Saga. And I just realized that at this point I would usually say that I have not seen every single film, but I actually have seen every single MCU film because it'd be weird to do a ranking without having seen every single MCU movie. The next thing is that these are not going to be reviews of all the MCU films of the Infinity Saga. I'm going to go through these films rather quickly and tell you guys why I put these films at certain spots on my list. And last but not least, let's just have a great time talking about one of the greatest franchises that has ever been put on film. But anyways, as you guys could probably imagine, no honorable mention. So with that being said, let's get into my ranking of the Infinity Saga of the MCU, starting with number 23. Starting off at the number 23 spot, my least favorite MCU film, that would be Iron Man 2. Now here's the thing, I completely understand that some people would probably have this higher on their list, and I definitely know that some people would have one particular film at this spot, to which don't worry, I'll get onto that next. Not only is this for me the weakest film of the MCU, but this is also, to me, the biggest disappointment of the MCU, especially knowing that the first Iron Man film was so good, if not a phenomenal film, and just the film that catapulted just an entire film franchise. Now don't get me wrong, there are a couple of things that I like about Iron Man 2. Like for one thing, I still love Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. I loved how they introduced Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, and there are a couple of action sequences, and I do like how they tried to take it more into a darker territory, especially with Tony Stark's heart. But honestly, the best way I can describe Iron Man 2 for me is that this movie was basically set up the movie, because all this movie was doing, at least in my eyes, was just doing setup, 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 setup. But Iron Man 2 just has so much wasted opportunity. Like, for example, when it came to the villains, Whiplash, people like Mickey Rourke, who, by the way, a great actor, they really don't do anything with him. Sam Rockwell plays as Justin Hammer. I mean, how do you waste Sam Rockwell? Don't get me wrong, guys, I don't hate Iron Man 2 because there are some things I like about it, but when I look at this film and compare it to the rest of the MCU, I found that this film is just a big step down, especially knowing that it came off of such an incredible film, where the incredible film definitely struck lightning in a bottle. And don't get me wrong, it's hard to strike lightning in a bottle twice, but this film for me just struck a dud. Coming into the number 22 spot is the MCU film that I know pretty much everybody else would have as their least favorite, and that is Thor: The Dark World. Now here's the thing, guys, I completely understand why some people, well, let's be real, 98% of MCU fans, if not all MCU fans, would have this as their least. But if you ask me, looking between this and Thor, there are definitely a lot of aspects where Thor, the original Thor, does better than Thor: The Dark World. But I think there are honestly some aspects that Thor: The Dark World gets better than the original Thor. Yeah, I said it. Chris Hemsworth is still great here. I do love the performance as well, minus Kat Dennings, so I couldn't stand this movie. There is one thing in which I can definitely agree with when it comes to people talking about Thor: The Dark World. It's that the first half of this movie isn't really that good. In fact, it's actually quite poor, although there are some scenes in the first half that I do like, but the moment that Loki comes to the picture, this movie gets so much better, including that one combat scene that involves portals. You can't deny that scene is awesome. But if there is one thing that I think we can all agree on when it comes to Thor: The Dark World, this movie easily has the worst villain out of all the MCU. That dark elf, I think its name is Malekith, I think. Yeah, that's how bad that villain was. Other than that, not quite my least favorite MCU film, but it's damn near close. At my number 21 spot is another big disappointment from the MCU, and that is Avengers Age of Ultron. And it's honestly really sad because if you guys have been following me since 2015, you guys will know that when it came to the guys and I's top 5 most anticipated films of 2015, I think Age of Ultron was in my top 3 because I was so looking forward to this film, especially knowing how great the original Avengers was. Age of Ultron, for me anyways, is just such a huge disappointment, especially I remember when I saw that first teaser, it had this more darker, ominous tone going into There's No Strings on Me, where Ultron is a good villain, but if you ask me, I'll say this word again, he is honestly for me one of the biggest disappointments for the MCU. Now don't get me wrong guys, James Spader did an amazing job as Ultron, but when I look at Ultron and compare him to the other MCU villains out there, he just, like I said before, disappointing. I feel like this film is a bit too long, it's overstuffed, there is way too much going on in this movie, and then that Ragnarok part with Thor, to which, I mean, I get why it was in there, but it still felt completely out of place. Man, at my number 20 spot is another big disappointment when it comes to the MCU for me, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now here's the thing when it comes to Guardians Volume 2, I know that there are tons of people that would probably put this even higher on their list, actually top 10, but then I know that there are tons of people that would put this lower, and I'm with those people, honestly. Before Avengers Infinity War came out, I did rewatch Guardians Volume 2, and I did appreciate it more, but I still don't like it more than I did when I first saw it. Now, this is a film that I do find to be fine. I think it's just solid enough. But at the same time, when I look at this film comparing it to the original Guardians, Guardians Volume 1 is absolutely incredible, where the thing is that I actually like about Guardians Volume 2 is this. I love the first 15 minutes, especially the opening credit sequence. It puts a big smile on my face the entire time, and I love the final act of this film. Everything in between, what was going on? And here's the thing, guys. I don't say that because I find this movie hard to follow, but I say that because what was the plot of this movie? When they do find Ego and go to his planet, it's like there's nothing going on, honestly. I mean, sure, there are things going on with Rocket and those golden people, to which, what the hell was up with those guys anyway? It feels like that there's nothing going on besides the characters telling jokes, and honestly, that's what Guardians Volume 2 feels like to me. Guardians 2 feels like a sitcom to me, where it's just joke, 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 joke. James Gunn did say that he wanted to explore the characters further rather than making a bigger film. And while I do admire that he wanted to explore the characters further in their relationships, at the same time I feel like that he sacrificed what could have been an amazing story and one of the best MCU films. At my number 19 spot is Captain Marvel. Now, here's the thing about Captain Marvel. I don't really find this film to be a disappointment because I wasn't looking forward to this film all that much. The trailers didn't really excite me that much. I was just like, you know what? This film just looks like it might be a fine space adventure. And that's what this movie was. To me, Captain Marvel is just a solid enough space romp. But the thing is this, I don't know whether if it was her choice or if it was the director's choice, but Captain Marvel was just devoid of emotion in this movie. Like, she was just bland in this. Now, Avengers Endgame, I feel like, did make up for this tenfold, but when it came to this movie, it was just, I mean, it was just fine. I mean, I don't hate this movie at all. In fact, I think this movie is, like I said, solid enough because the first act of this movie wasn't a big fan, but I decided this moved way too slow. But the moment that Captain Marvel crashed into that blockbuster, which by the way, nostalgia right there. But the moment that Captain Marvel crash landed in the blockbuster, I feel like that's where the movie picked up enough, but it doesn't go full speed ahead like I feel like it should have been. I do love Jude Law as a villain, although I don't think he's one of the best villains, and I do like as well that they introduced the Skrulls finally of the MCU, but I feel like that they didn't go into the Skrulls that much, into which I hope that Captain Marvel 2 does that. When it comes to the directing now, the directors, I think their names are Anna Borden and Ryan Fleck, if I remember correctly. They have made some good movies in the past, but when it comes to them and their directing in this movie, I honestly feel like that they were not the right choices to make this movie. I really do feel that. And something else I just realized about this movie as well is that this is supposed to be an origin story about Captain Marvel. I feel like that they rushed to that origin so much. At my number 18 spot is Ant-Man and the Wasp, another big disappointment from the MCU. I was looking forward to Ant-Man and the Wasp so much, mainly because I thought the original Ant-Man was such a big surprise. Now this is what I will say that I like about Ant-Man and the Wasp. I still love Paul Rudd in this movie. I think he still kills as Ant-Man. I love Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp, and I think their chemistry is great. I still love Michael Douglas as Hank Pym. And when it comes to the action sequences, I think not only are some of the action sequences more inventive than the original one, but there are some that make me laugh my ass off. And the comedy half the time does work, but then when I get into the things I don't like, this is a film that once again I feel like it's just trying to do way too much at once. Like for example, when it came to the comedy, there were a lot of the jokes I did laugh at, but there were some of the jokes that just fell flat on their faces. Plus it had that subplot that involved Randall Park trying to take in Ant-Man, if I remember correctly. Oh yeah, that plot kind of sucked, didn't it? Oh yeah, I totally forgot about the other villains in this movie. Now here's the thing, it's not that the villains were bad. The villains are actually not so bad, but the villains in this movie, I found them to be really forgettable. But yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp isn't particularly a bad film. I just find that it's just a rather forgettable film within the MCU. At my number 17 spot, now before I reveal my number 17 spot, I do understand that I ranked this film much lower, but honestly, this is one of the more underrated films in the MCU, and that to me is The Incredible Hulk. Now once again guys, I completely understand that The Incredible Hulk is for me ranked at my number 17 spot, but at the same time, I feel like that more people shit on this movie than it deserves, because if you ask me, The Incredible Hulk is actually a pretty solid movie. Now, it's not a particularly great film because there are a lot of things that could have been done better, but at the same time, it's really not that bad of a movie. In fact, like I mentioned before, it's pretty solid. I really dug what Edward Norton did in the role, and I really wish that he came back for the Avengers, although don't get me wrong, I love what Mark Ruffalo has done with his role as the Hulk, which makes me realize, why haven't they made a sequel? Seriously. This movie does reference a lot of things from the TV show. It's actually a really fun movie. I like how they go into the more Jekyll and Hyde aspect. Now, seriously, if someone says that Ang Lee's Hulk is better than this movie, you wouldn't have a discussion to do, seriously. The action is a lot of fun. I really like the Abomination fight at the end. I feel like that the Abomination villain doesn't get enough credit, really. But if there is one thing that I think we can all agree on that we might love about The Incredible Hulk, it's the post-credits scene where Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., who does reprise his role, to which that was a big surprise, I feel like. But it's the post-credits scene to which he reveals that, hey, we're getting the Avengers together, to which that was freaking awesome. Coming in at my number 16 spot is Iron Man 3. Now, here's the thing about Iron Man 3. I feel like that a lot of people don't like this movie, and actually I have seen why a lot of people don't like it, and that's because of the plot twist surrounding around the Mandarin. Now, here's the thing. The Mandarin plot twist thing is a very meh thing. There were some things I really like about it. I do like that they grounded more in this reality, and actually, when I think about it, that plot twist was hilarious. But at the same time, when you know about the Mandalorian... Wait, this isn't Star Wars, sorry about that. But the thing is, when you look at the Mandarin lore, this is not really the Mandarin character. However, at the same time, I do like that Shane Black subverts expectations. Now, here's the thing I want to bring up as well. People say that Iron Man 3 works more as a Shane Black film than an MCU film. But here's the thing, I actually think that Iron Man 3 works not only as a Shane Black film, but also as an MCU film. So I think it hits both things almost perfectly. Now, once again, I will say that I was looking forward to seeing the actual Mandarin in this film, but the fact that they did kind of brush that aside, I can see why people don't like it. It's more that twist is really half and half with me. But other than that, Iron Man 3 is a great time. I really don't understand why some people hate it because of that plot twist. I mean, do you have anything else to say about the plot twist? Like, the action is amazing, the score is phenomenal, and the script is hilarious. I mean, it's a Shane Black script. Shane Black is fucking hilarious. But yeah, really thinking about it now, I think that Iron Man 3 is a much better film than people say it is. And I'm gonna say this statement once again. I find that Iron Man 3 is a pretty underrated film, seriously. See this movie if you haven't, it's a really damn good movie. At my number 15 spot is, for me, the biggest surprise that the MCU has had to offer, and that is Ant-Man. Ant-Man, when I first heard about it, I was so excited, especially knowing that Edgar Wright was making it. I just thought, oh my god, Edgar Wright's making an MCU film. This is gonna be incredible! But then when I found out that he dropped out, I just started to lose so much hope. But then I saw that first trailer and I just thought, oh my god, what are they doing with this film? And then I finally saw it. This movie's great. Like, it's pretty freaking great. Before Ant-Man came out, everyone was like, what the fuck is Ant-Man? But now they're like, Ant-Man is awesome. I absolutely love Paul Rudd in this movie. I think he shines so much in this movie. And one thing that I absolutely love about this movie is how they take use of Ant-Man's world using macro photography, which looks absolutely insane. The action sequences are very inventive. It's also hilarious. This movie has so many hilarious moments, particularly the Thomas the Tank Engine moment, which makes me laugh my ass off every time I see it. And to add on top of that, Corey Stoll makes a great villain as Yellow Jacket. Now here's the thing that I will say about Ant-Man. I do feel like that Ant-Man takes a lot from Iron Man, but at the same time, for the most part, it does work, but you can't help but feel that it really does feel like that it's taking just a lot from Iron Man. Other than that, Ant-Man was just a really fun heist movie that definitely brought the MCU into a much more fun direction, I feel like. Coming in at my number 14 spot is, to me, the most underrated film of the MCU, and that is Captain America: The First Avenger. Like Captain Marvel, the trailers for this film didn't really excite me all that much. I mean, it looked like a fun movie, but I wasn't really expecting all that much out of it. But unlike Captain Marvel, this movie is freaking great. Chris Evans absolutely nails the role of Captain America, and actually I find that it's kind of a funny coincidence how he goes from playing a Marvel character in Fantastic Four and then he goes to playing a Marvel character in the MCU. I just find that awesome, honestly. The reason why I like Captain America: The First Avenger so much is because this movie just feels like a really fun World War II film that involves Captain America, and the fact that it involves Captain America, I feel like, makes it even better. And one thing that you gotta love about Captain America: The First Avenger is how this film incorporates that iconic image of Captain America punching Hitler. And then one thing that I absolutely love, and I'm getting goosebumps thinking about because I love this song, is the Star Spangled Man theme. Honest to God, that might be in my top 5, maybe top 10 MCU songs, because that song, it's so catchy, seriously. And on top of that, Hugo Weaving was a great villain as Red Skull. I mean, seriously, I feel like that Red Skull isn't talked about as much. Well, that was until Infinity War and Endgame came out. But no, Captain America: The First Avenger, if you guys have not seen this movie, or if you haven't seen this movie in a long time, I definitely suggest you revisit it because it is such a fun movie. It really is. At my number 13 spot is an MCU film that I feel like that people would have a lot higher on their list, but for me, it's here, and that is Spider-Man: Homecoming. Spider-Man: Homecoming gives Spider-Man finally his first pretty good, if not great, first solo film within the MCU after a phenomenal introduction in Captain America: Civil War. Now, the best way I can describe Spider-Man: Homecoming is like this: combine, obviously, a Spider-Man film with a John Hughes movie, and honestly, that's what you get in this movie. And honestly, it is really, really damn good, if not, like I said, pretty great, actually. Tom Holland absolutely nails the role of Spider-Man. And well, I will not lie to you guys, I've always loved Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man because Spider-Man 2 is still to this day my favorite live-action Spider-Man film, though I cannot deny that I think that Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man. Not to mention that Michael Keaton in the role as the Vulture, Adrian Toomes, I mean, seriously, who expected that he was going to be the father of Peter Parker's crush? I remember that in my theater when I first saw this movie, everyone had this reaction: oh, fuck. Now, I will admit that the action sequences in this film aren't the greatest, and honestly, if I were to give my biggest fault of this movie, if you guys saw my review, Ned, could not stand him. He annoyed the shit out of me so much, but other than that, Spider-Man: Homecoming finally gave us what we have wanted for so long, and that is a Spider-Man film in the MCU, and honestly, this film is pretty damn great, and I cannot wait for Spider-Man 3 whenever that is. Coming in at my number 12 spot is the original Thor film, an origin story that I feel like that people have forgotten about. Now, here's the thing, guys, I love Thor Ragnarok, and don't worry, I will be talking about that a little bit later. When it comes to the original Thor film, I feel like that people don't get this film as much love as they used to, because this film is a damn good, if not a pretty damn great origin movie. Chris Hemsworth absolutely shines this movie, and not to mention this film introduces one of the best, if not arguably the best MCU film besides Thanos, and that is Loki, who, by the way, Tom Hiddleston, who has been an absolute joy to watch in the MCU film ever since Thor. And something else that I love about this movie is how Kenneth Branagh directs this movie, how he brings up Thor and this Shakespearean-like tale of him going to Earth after he loses his powers. And by the way, those Earth scenes, especially this part.
This drink, I like it.
I know, it's great, right?
Another!
When I first saw that scene, I could not stop laughing, seriously. I was started as a very arrogant guy, then going into someone that's actually very humble by the end of it. And even though I will admit the Destroyer villain wasn't great, particularly, other than that though, Thor is a really good, like I said before, if not a great origin story that introduced us into the God of Thunder. Coming in at my number 11 spot is Spider-Man Far From Home. Yes, guys, I do think that Far From Home is a better film than Homecoming. The first half of this film is pretty good. I don't think it's a great first half, but it's a really good first half that's entertaining. It's also really funny. But then, right when that second half kicks in, I mean, oh my god, the second half is a perfect second half, seriously. One thing that I absolutely love, though, about Spider-Man Far From Home is how this film deals with Peter Parker in a post-world endgame into which everyone expects him to be the new Tony Stark. And speaking of Peter Parker, I absolutely love Tom Holland even more so because he absolutely shines in this movie even more so. I love Zendaya and I love their chemistry together. Seriously, they're so cute together. And actually, my one big flaw from Homecoming was fixed because I love Ned in this movie. In fact, I find him even better than he was in Homecoming. And the one thing that we have to talk about since we're talking about Far From Home is that incredible performance that Jake Gyllenhaal brought as Mysterio, which, by the way, Mysterio was absolutely perfect in this film, and Jake Gyllenhaal, I thought, looked like he was having a blast playing the role. And who could forget those amazing credit sequences that will forever change the world of the MCU forever, especially that amazing cameo by J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. I remember everyone lost their fucking mind when I saw that, myself included. But no, I honestly love Spider-Man Far From Home. To me, it is the second best live-action Spider-Man film behind Spider-Man 2. Alrighty guys, we are finally getting into my top 10, and at my number 10 is Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange, man, this was a movie that honestly blew my mind into a million pieces. This was an MCU film that we had never seen done ever before, and because of that reason, even though, admittedly, I did rate it lower than, let's say, Far From Home, Homecoming, the original Thor, the reason why it gets higher on my list is because of what it does for the MCU, and not only introduces us brilliantly into the character of Stephen Strange, played amazingly by Benedict Cumberbatch, but Doctor Strange also does such an amazing job of introducing us into the more occult side of the MCU with the dark arts, magic, wizards, the Ancient One, Dormammu. Oh my god, Dormammu. Dormammu! I've come to bargain. Not to mention as well, when it comes to special effects, this film I think has some of the greatest special effects of the MCU with some of the most, also, one of the most mind-bending, actually, when I think about it, the most mind-bending effects of the MCU. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it sucks that Scott Derrickson will not be here to bring us his sequel to Doctor Strange, but I cannot wait to see what Sam Raimi does with Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. I cannot wait. At my number 9 spot is the film that I think we can all agree is currently the best out of all the Thor films at the moment, and that is Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok, honestly guys, this movie is just such a great time of the movies. This movie is just so much fun. But at the same time, after Thor the Dark World, Thor definitely needed a big change of pace, and Taika Waititi brought just that, bringing us such a colorful film, a fun film, an action-packed film, and also a film that's hilarious from start to finish. Thor Ragnarok is honestly just a colorful blast of a movie, and not to mention Cate Blanchett is hella easily one of the best villains of the MCU, should I add. And of course, we cannot talk about Thor Ragnarok without mentioning Immigrant Song, the best song to use when Thor is in combat, seriously. I mean, Taika Waititi, thank you. Also, you cannot forget to mention Taika Waititi as Korg. I mean, Korg is hilarious. And I almost forgot to mention this, Thor and Hulk being together is just some of the funniest moments I have ever seen in the MCU. Yeah, Hulk in this movie is just absolutely brilliant, to say the least. I love the Hulk in this movie. Other than that, Thor Ragnarok was essentially like watching a Saturday morning cartoon brought to the big screen, and all the better for that because this movie is just full of zany, colorful fun, and I could not love it more for that. Coming in at my number 8 spot is the film that started it all, and that is Iron Man. Now, obviously, this is a no shit Sherlock statement, but if it wasn't for Iron Man, we would not be here right now discussing how great the MCU is. Now, granted, not everyone's a fan of the MCU, which is fine, but not only is Iron Man essentially the godfather of the MCU, but I feel like that Iron Man also changed the way we look at comic book films, much the way that The Dark Knight did, and I think these two actually came out the same year, if I'm not mistaken. We would have never gotten the greatness of the MCU saga, of this amazing film franchise that is still currently going on and on right now. To say that Robert Downey Jr. absolutely nails it in his role of Iron Man is an understatement. I love all the performances. The action sequences are absolutely amazing. This movie is also full of humor, and I love about this film. I mean, don't get me wrong, we didn't even know of the MCU's existence until after The Incredible Hulk came out. But even if this film was just a standalone film, I feel like that Iron Man would even work as a standalone film, even if he just did it as a trilogy still. But to say that Iron Man is an iconic film, if you ask me, is an understatement. And not to mention, Jeff Bridges as the villain, another underrated villain if you ask me. If it wasn't for Iron Man, we would not be here today talking about the MCU, to say the least. So yeah, Iron Man is without a doubt the godfather of the MCU. So coming in at my number 7 spot is a film that I guarantee a lot of you, the moment that I mention the name, you'll say, how in the hell is this not higher? But for me, at my number 7 spot is The Avengers. The Avengers is a movie that, if this was handed in the wrong hands, this would have been one of the biggest clusterfucks in the history of superhero films. Mainly because if you asked us back in the day before this movie came out, we could not have dreamed a team-up film that included Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, also the Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. We could not have imagined in our wildest dreams of a movie like this coming out. But hey, not only did it succeed, but it also just gave us, we were like kids again watching this movie, to say the least. Joss Whedon just absolutely nailed everything about the Avengers, from the characters and how they would probably interact with each other since the first meeting, how they would argue, how they would finally get back together. The fight sequence is just so imaginable, and plus, the theme song. I just thought about it, just give me chills right now. Alan Silvestri's theme song for the Avengers is easily one of the most iconic, I feel like one of the most iconic superhero theme songs ever. This movie was a dream come true for a lot of comic book fans because, like I mentioned before, we could have never thought a movie like this was possible because we thought this movie was like, there is no way that they'll pull this off, but hey, they did it. They made the Avengers. They pulled it off. And who could forget that post-credits scene that involved the shawarma scene, and also where we finally saw our first glimpse into Thanos, who would kick our asses. We could have never saw this movie coming, and when it did come, it filled our hearts. It made us feel like kids again, and we were just in heaven watching this movie. At my number 6 spot is Black Panther, a film that a lot of people find to be overrated, to which, what? Black Panther is the furthest thing from overrated. Seriously, if anything, if you ask me, Guardians Volume 2 is overrated. Yeah, I said it. Black Panther is just such a great piece of filmmaking. Now, a lot of people have been saying that the CG is weak. I have seen far worse CG, seriously, than this. Now, I will say this, there is maybe one or two parts the CG isn't the best, like with the rhinos, they could have looked better in the final sequence. Wasn't the greatest thing, but other than that, this movie is such a great fucking superhero movie. One particular reason why I love this movie is because cultural-wise, it gives kids a superhero to look up to. Also, I love the entire cast. I mean, Chadwick Boseman absolutely nails it as Black Panther. And one thing that people somehow don't like, well, not everyone, but a lot of people I've seen, come on, Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger? One of the most awesome villains out there, and not to mention you understand why he's doing so, and not to mention one of the most heartbreaking plot twists in an MCU film, seriously. Ryan Coogler brought such a personal touch by making this such a personal movie, but also a very epic movie. Basically, this movie felt like The Godfather meets James Bond. And if you don't like that combination, I don't know how you cannot like this movie. I love Black Panther so much, it's up the bar for the MCU, and I cannot wait to see what Ryan Coogler does for Black Panther 2. Seriously, I am psyched. Alrighty guys, we're getting into my top 5 MCU films, and starting with my number 5 is Avengers Infinity War. I know that a lot of people would probably put this in their top 3, but for me it's here because my one main issue with this movie is that when it comes to the structure, the editing, if you ask me, is a little all over the place, but other than that, Avengers Infinity War takes what the Avengers did and catapults it into the stratosphere. Before the Avengers came out, we would have never expected for Thor, Cap, Iron Man, and the Hulk to meet up. Where before Avengers Infinity War came out, I mean, we had an idea of what could happen, but we never in our wildest of dreams imagining all of our heroes, well, even though they're more in vignettes, but still, we never expected for Iron Man and Doctor Strange to be talking to the Guardians of the Galaxy. And the other thing is Thanos. This is essentially Thanos' movie. And by the way, we never expected Thanos to get all the Infinity Stones, because I remember, I think I was watching this at the screen and I just thought, okay, they're probably going to stop him at some point. And then when I saw him getting the Mind Stone, I just thought, oh my god, he actually got them. Fuck! But if you ask me, Avengers Infinity War mostly achieves its goals with everything involving Thor, with how they tie everything together, and then by the ending with one of the most unforgettable endings we have ever seen in just not only comic book films, but films in general. This movie was just an experience seeing all of the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy together in one movie. Just absolutely insane, to say the least. Coming in at my number 4 spot is Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes, guys, you heard me right. I like this more than the Avengers. I remember that when this movie first came out, I remember that a lot of people were like, I don't know how I feel about this one. It looks really weird, but me being a big fan of James Gunn, I was just like, this movie looks amazing, and man, did Guardians deliver on almost everything. Now, my one flaw with Guardians of the Galaxy is that Ronan the Accuser kind of sucks as a villain, but other than that, this movie just achieves upon almost everything. And something else about Guardians 2, one obstacle, a big obstacle that James Gunn had to overcome was that when it came to the actual team, nobody knew who the Guardians were. No one knew who Star-Lord was, no one knew who Gamora was, no one knew Groot or Rocket Raccoon, but now look at them. Star-Lord, these guys are the most recognizable heroes of the MCU, and if you ask me, Rocket Raccoon heals my heart. And one particular thing that we cannot forget to mention, since we're talking about Guardians, is Awesome Mix Volume 1. To me, one of the greatest soundtracks ever put on film, and it's a soundtrack I listen to this day. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys as well, Guardians honestly makes me cry every time I see it. Guardians is honestly one of the most emotional MCU films out there, besides my top 3 anyways. Not only is Guardians a very emotional film, it's a very heartfelt film, well, it's kind of the same thing, but it's also a very funny film. It's honestly the funniest film of the MCU, if you ask me. I cannot wait to see what James Gunn does with Guardians Volume 3, seriously. I'm sure that he will make an amazing Volume 3. James Gunn, cannot freaking wait to see what you do. Coming in at my number 3 spot is coincidentally a third film, of which you guys could probably guess it because I haven't mentioned it already, but that is Captain America Civil War. There's actually a joke that goes around relating to Captain America Civil War, which people say that it's Avengers 2.5, to which, you know what? This movie should have been Avengers 2. It really should have been. And then just really something about Captain America Civil War as well. My top 3, they're films directed by the Russo brothers, so let's tell you right there how great the Russo brothers have been with the MCU. But when it comes to Civil War, and my number 1 especially, this film is just a gigantic achievement within the MCU of how, I don't know how they did it, how the directors and the writers got all of these characters together, and this film, especially in that amazing airport brawl. I mean, seriously, that airport brawl might as well have been Super Smash Bros. With MCU characters. That's how amazing it is. A couple of things that I particularly love about Civil War, one of them being is how this film ties in to previous Avengers films like Avengers, Age of Ultron, but also how this film took our beloved team and it tear them apart due to Zemo, who I think is a villain that does not get nearly enough credit, seriously, because Zemo, if you ask me, is one of the most underloved villains in the MCU, and by the way, Daniel Bruhl, phenomenal performance, by the way. Yeah, sure, Thanos did kill a couple of the Avengers, but Zemo tore them apart from the inside. When has that ever happened within the MCU? And also, that plot twist involving Bucky and Tony Stark's parents, which leads to one of the most incredible fights of the MCU with Cap versus Iron Man. I don't get how people cannot like Civil War. Also, like I should mention something, Batman v Superman, this did it better, just saying. Coming into my number 2 spot is not only the MCU film that grounded the MCU, but it also kicked the MCU into high gear, and that is Captain America Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier is just a badass movie in every single way possible. Not only that, Captain America Winter Soldier took the character of Captain America along with the MCU, which were already good. They were, granted, don't get me wrong, but it made the character of Captain America not only one of the coolest characters of the MCU, personally for me, it's my favorite character besides Rocket Raccoon, but it made the MCU even better. Captain America the Winter Soldier, if you ask me, feels like a Bourne movie meets All the President's Men, which are, by the way, both amazing films. I mean, seriously, the Bourne movies are amazing, but if you guys haven't seen the Bourne movies, check them out. They're badass as all hell. And also the Winter Soldier, I think one of the most badass villains until they brought him to become a hero. You could never forget that highway fight from Captain America the Winter Soldier when they're going into hand-to-hand combat, when you're hearing especially the music. I'm getting chills thinking about it right now. I'm serious. I love this movie so much. In that final fight sequence between Cap and the Winter Soldier, when the Winter Soldier was shooting at Cap, I thought that Cap was going to die. And that was the first time I ever thought that in the MCU in its entirety. It's a damn shame to see the Russo brothers are walking away from the MCU for the time being, because I really feel like that they made Captain America one of the best superheroes ever with this film especially. The Winter Soldier was my number 1 MCU film for a very long time, of course, until I saw my number 1. Alrighty guys, we are finally here at my number 1 favorite film of the MCU's Infinity Saga. Now you guys could have probably guessed it a while back ago, but my number 1 favorite film of the Infinity Saga is Avengers Endgame. Man, what can I say about Avengers Endgame that has not been said about this film already? To me, this film is a bona fide masterpiece of the superhero genre. This movie is an achievement in not only superhero filmmaking, is an achievement in blockbuster filmmaking, but it's also a gigantic achievement in filmmaking in general. How this film goes about what it's doing and just succeeds in nailing every single aspect possible. Everything about this movie, if you ask me, is a perfect movie. Now, I know a lot of people won't agree with about, which is completely fine, but to me, this in my eyes is a perfect movie. But every time I saw this movie, I cry every time, I laugh every time, I smile like a kid every time. I feel like that I'm in heaven. Now, bringing it back to the Avengers, we couldn't have possibly imagined that the Avengers could have happened. Like with Infinity War, we couldn't have imagined that Infinity War couldn't have happened. But Endgame took everything about those movies, with all the Avengers movies, with all the solo movies, and it just kicks it up and just not only brings it out of the stratosphere, but out of our galaxy. From how this movie ties into Age of Ultron, from how it ties into Iron Man, from how this movie ties into Thor, to Thor Ragnarok, Winter Soldier, the first Avengers, Civil War, the Incredible Hulk to an extent, also with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I mean, come on. I Love You 3000, seriously, like, who doesn't smile when they hear that every time? But one particular thing that I really love and I really appreciate about Endgame is how this film starts off as more of a somber character study after the events of Infinity War, and then it goes into the time travel aspects where you get to the more fun aspects, and then it leads into, possibly if you ask me, one of the greatest battle scenes in the history of film. All of the heroes, Earth's mightiest warriors, going up against Thanos and his army, and probably the greatest brawl ever seen in a comic book movie. Honest to God, this is one of my favorite movies. I could go on and on rambling as to why I absolutely adore this movie with all my heart, but I'm just gonna leave it with this. It's one of my favorite comic book films of all time, but it's also one of my favorite movies of all time. Seriously though, I fucking love Avengers Endgame to death. Alrighty guys, and that is going to do it for my ranking of the MCU's Infinity Saga. Please comment down and let me know below, what are your guys' rankings of all of the MCU films for the Infinity Saga? Do you guys have films ranked higher or lower? Let me know below. If you guys would like to follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch. I'm also on Snapchat and Stardust. So if you want to follow me on all those social media platforms, all the links and the usernames are in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed my ranking of the MCU's Infinity Saga. If so, please hit that like button, also subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell for whenever a new video of mine goes live. If you guys would like to see any of my previous 2 videos or reviews, please click either right there or there. And of course, until my next video, I will see you guys next time.